So my name is Callie Hutchison. I am a physical therapist at Parkinson Wellness Recovery. I'm also in charge of hosting our wellness series. This is our second virtual wellness series, and I'm so excited you are all here to join us. And I also wanted to take this chance to let you guys know that we will be opening up a virtual power gym. And I'm going to share my screen here so you can see the site for this. So if you go to our website, powerforlife.org/virtual-power, and then that slash again, you can see that up here in the top. You can enter over here on that right, that virtual power gym interest. You just fill out that information there and submit. And then once that service is up and running, we will contact you. But basically, it's going to be a virtual gym experience where we have guided exercise plans, wellness tips and videos. We're going to have high and low intensity video content geared specifically towards people with Parkinson's disease, as well as live feed group exercise classes. So if you guys are interested in that, please visit this site here. And now I'm gonna go ahead and let our speaker get started. So this is Helene Bouchard, and she's gonna be talking today about pelvic floor and Parkinson's disease. All right.
Hi everyone, my name is Helene Bouchard. I'm a physical therapist as well, just like Callie, and I'll go ahead and share my screen here today. And don't hesitate if you have any questions, write them down, and we'll make sure to address that. And I'll also leave my email address. So if you have any questions after the presentation, do you see that, everyone? Let's see here. I'm just gonna go back to the beginning. Made a mistake here. Okay, there we go. So everyone sees that, I hope. So, so I'm gonna be talking about pelvic floor because that's my area of expertise, and Parkinson's is just a diagnosis that makes all the pelvic floor dysfunctions a little bit harder. So we'll be discussing about that. So a little bit about me, my background. I'm a physical therapist since 2001. I worked initially in rehab centers in neurology, treated a lot of Parkinson's disease patients, did traumatic brain injury and vestibular rehabilitation at the beginning of my career. And then I transitioned to pelvic health a little bit around 2007, and they opened a new program at Université de Montréal for pelvic floor treatments. So I did that whole program, 2.5 years of pelvic floor training, along with still working in the clinic for pelvic floor patients, and opened a few more clinics after that to see all the patients, but all across Canada. So I was moving along with my husband, though I'm not like that crazy to go all across Canada to open clinics. So, so right now I'm working here in Oro Valley. I'm working at Oro Valley Hospital. They do have an outpatient therapy, so they do a big program there. So I have worked in conjunction with other of my physical therapists colleagues to exchange, some thoughts about Parkinson's disease and pelvic floor, and it seems to be a big concern. So I was really happy to come and share with all of you about what my area of expertise is. And it's not only because you have Parkinson's disease, they have those problems. So I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of your spouses out there that's still going to try to lend a little ear here and see what's going on with pelvic floor, because that does not cover only the neurological part of the problem. A lot of, as we age, as the menopause sets in, or the function problems, like getting harder and harder to move around sets in, we get a little bit more and more about some urinary symptoms that we're going to talk about today. So don't leave your questions all the way to the end. We can still put them in the chat as we go, and we'll try to go through it. Callie is going to be like the moderator for that. So the prevalence, so how often does the urinary symptoms occur in Parkinson's disease? They are reported in 27 to 39% of cases. They can come with or without urinary symptoms. So there's no, like Parkinson's disease can come with or without no urinary symptoms. There's no, when there is urinary symptoms, there's not really a correlation, like a link between the age that you got the diagnosis or how long you've had the Parkinson's for in order to have urinary symptoms. So there's not a real significance of why, you know, or when along the Parkinson disease the urinary symptoms are going to occur. So you could have them now, you could have them later, but there's no link, and you know, it's not like you're going to have the Parkinson's for 10 years and it's going to occur like at year 5. It doesn't work that way. So most patients found, like the ones that had the urinary symptoms, found their symptoms that are more and more bothersome as the Parkinson's disease progress. So that's like across the board. If you do have like those urinary problems like leakage and urgency, these are going to become more and more bothersome. And this may do just more because of the progression of the Parkinson's itself, which is harder to move around and harder for your bladder and your brain to get linked together to understand each other. So as the Parkinson progresses, a little bit harder to get the information from your bladder all the way to your brain, and for your brain to respond in a better way along with the bladder. So that's mostly why you're going to get, it's going to get more and more bothersome for you. So if we look at what's the main complaint of pelvic floor, or not necessarily pelvic floor, but urinary symptoms, you're going to have the main one is nocturia, which is getting up at night more than once. As we age, after 65 years old, it's normal to get up once a night. So that's the normal. Maybe it's annoying, but it's along with what's normal with your kidney function. So as you age, the kidneys are going to eliminate a little bit more of the fluid you accumulated during the day, and it's normal to kind of get up at night once to eliminate all that fluid. So that's the first main complaint. Frequency. So a normal frequency, how often, one of my first questions I ask my patients when they come in the clinic is, how often do you get to the bathroom every day? Which is hard to start counting, but still we spend a minute on just kind of remembering how many times you've been to the bathroom. So that counts like the first time you go in the morning all the way till before you go to bed at night. So the last before you go in your bed. So usually the normal is like 5 to 7 times a day. That's a normal amount of time. If you're going less, you might not be drinking enough. If you're going more, well, that's more of the problem usually, is going more than 7 times, 8, 9. So usually 8, 9, there's not a problem. When it hits 10, 12, 14 times a day, well, people start like, well, I'm always in the bathroom, or I'm going to know where all the bathroom is in every store. So that's one of the main symptoms. Like if you know, like every bathroom, every store is like, okay, there you're thinking about like going to the bathroom quite a bit. So that's that might be a problem you don't even realize you have. Third one is urgency. So it's the inability to delay. So you're going to get the urge to go, and it has to be now. Get out of my way. I'm going to the bathroom. It's my turn. So you don't want to delay anything like going to the bathroom. So that's urgency. It's like getting the symptoms of needing to go to the bathroom and needing to go right now. The urgency can lead to urge incontinence, which is not the same thing. I want to say, like, you can have urgency without having any leakage. So urgency is just like, it's overwhelming need to go. So you go, you can get there in time, no problem. So that's urgency. Urge incontinence is you get the urgency first, then on your way to the bathroom, as you get closer, as you see the toilet, as you fiddle with to get your pants down, you're going to have leakage starting at that point. So that could be all the time. That could be once a day, once a week. So it's, even if there's just a little bit of it, it's still called urge incontinence. So it's the leakage right after urgency. So that's the difference with the two. There's like 2 types of leakage. You have the urge and you have the stress. So stress is, it's not necessarily being stressed, it's a stress on the bladder. So let's say you have your bladder is full of urine. A stress is going to be everything that's going to have physical pressure on your bladder, and it's going to make the sphincter at the bottom of your bladder leak a little bit as you're having some pressure on it. So you're going to get pressure and some leakage. So that's stress incontinence. It can be caused by anything that increases the pressure in your abdomen, such as the most common one is coughing, sneezing, walking fast, bending down. I get that a lot in men after prostatectomy, just standing up, like putting a lot of strain to push on your chair to get up. That can create some urge incontinence because you need to go real bad, or it could be only stress incontinence, which is just the way you breathe or the way you get up from your chair could cause some too much pressure on the bladder. So this is the difference between the two. And then on the opposite side, you also have, like I said, there's a connection that is not well made at one point with Parkinson's disease in communicating with your bladder. So whenever you need to go to the bathroom, you can have difficulty in opening the sphincter and initiating the flow of urine, like the first flow to go. So it takes a while before you can relax the sphincter, relax those muscles in order for the bladder to start emptying. And you have also urinary retention. So you feel like when you're done, it's not completely done yet, but there's nothing happening anymore. So it's basically some urine staying left over in the bladder. It can be caused by either too much stiffness of your sphincter, too much stiffness of the bladder itself, or also mostly in women, I would say some prolapse. So the bladder, instead of being a nice round balloon, it can have like a little pockets. So in those pockets, there could be a little leftover urine in there that doesn't get over the little funnel shape here. So you could have some urinary retention, which leads a little bit more to urinary tract infections and problems like that, and links back to the frequency. Since it's not empty, you're starting with a head start already for your next accumulation of urine. So you're gonna have to go to the bathroom a bit more often. So these are the main symptoms of what I look for in the clinic, trying to determine where exactly the problem is, because there's a different approach in physical therapy for the pelvic floor of determining what's the problem along all those symptoms in order to give you the best exercises or the best way to address all of those problems. So if I go to the next slide, you need to learn a little bit in the clinic. My next step after I ask all those questions and try to determine what's your habits is to explain to you how it works, how the pelvic floor works. Here on that slide, you're gonna have men and women. We're really similar, even if we think in that zone we're not. We are pretty similar. So if you look on the left side is the male pelvic floor and the right side is the women's pelvic floor. The only difference basically is in males a bit narrower, and then since you see on the, you're gonna see like the two bones where you sit are on either side of your pelvic floor. So with male, it's a bit closer together. Women, it's gonna be a bit more separated for delivery. At the back part of the pelvic floor, which is at the bottom of your screen, you're gonna see the tailbone, which is part of the pelvic floor. Right above that, in the middle of the pelvic floor, you're gonna see the anus, which is part of it. And then you're gonna see, as you go up, all the muscles that are more for sexual function, which is what we see in here. I'm gonna show you on my screen here. Do I need to stop sharing? I guess so. So I'm gonna stop my sharing here so I go a tiny bit bigger in your screen and you can see it better. So there you go. So you can see a little bit more. I'm gonna turn it side to side. So see, the pelvic floor is more like a hammock shape. So you're gonna see that nice curvature here. So from the tailbone in the back here to the pubic bone all the way to the front here. So the pelvic floor is a very, it's a hammock here. So if its main function is to support the inner organ. It's basically the abdominals we have, but at the bottom of our pelvis here. And it goes also, I'm gonna rotate it here from, like we saw a little bit more, that's what we saw on my previous slide. It goes from side to side and you see like that's the whole pelvic floor. It's much bigger than we think. It's not only like the sphincter of your bladder, it's much bigger than we think. And I'm gonna rotate it again. So that's the front here. We're going on the back, just to give you a three-dimensional image of what it should look like. And then I'm gonna tilt it over so you really see how much of a kind of a dome-shaped muscle. It's really a round surface inside, and it supports everything from side to side as well. Okay, so just to have an idea, because what I give you as a little landmark here for your pelvic floor is when you're going to squeeze your pelvic floor, when you're going to do a contraction. It's like a bicep, right? So when you do a bicep contraction, your bicep is going to get shorter, it's going to get bulkier. Same thing here. When you do a pelvic floor contraction, you want to think about holding the flow of pee and a gas at the same time, because you want to activate all the muscle. and you want to feel that your pelvic floor is going inward. So it's going to go inside of your pelvis. It's not a huge elevation. It's about, you know, like a centimeter high, but still you want to squeeze, you're going to squeeze like you want to lift or suck in a little bit your pelvic floor inside. So I'll go back to my presentation here. And there. Okay. So I hope that covers enough and that you can understand or visualize the anatomy of your pelvic floor. So this is a bit more of an open view. So let's say I took that model. I have another one here actually that I can show you, but it's going to be a tiny bit tinier, and I'm opening it up. So basically I'm slicing everything, and now you're seeing everything from the side. I know I'm a bit smaller now, but still I just wanted to. I will stay with the slide right now. Oh, come on, go back in. Doesn't want to. I'm on the wrong side. Okay. So what you're seeing right now is one side of your pelvis from inside. So that's where it's a tiny bit different in men and women. Everything that's going to come from the right side of the screen, and the male and the female is the sacrum. That's the end of your spine. And then you're going to have right after that, you're going to have your rectum and the anus. Then for women, you're going to have the vagina. For the men, it's going to be all closed up until you have the urethra, which is much longer and goes in the penis, goes back up. And that's where you're going to have the prostate, which brings another set of problems in men with retention if there's too much pressure in the prostate. So that gives you a little bit of overview what's in there. And also I want to point out, because we're going to talk a bit more about constipation later and what to do about constipation. But if you look at where the rectum is, and you imagine there's constipation all along, because the rectum doesn't stop there. There's a lot of more intestine matter in that zone. If you have constipation, there's going to be a possibility too that there's more pressure in the pelvis and more pressure on the bladder, which brings symptoms that could be bothersome as well. So a little bit more about the function of the bladder itself, because there is a usage for a bladder. At rest, when the bladder is just in between going to the bathroom, it's just urine storage. So there's no other function than just store urine. So when you're in storing mode, like at rest, the bladder is supposed to be relaxed. So it's a relaxed muscle, and the sphincter at the bottom is going to be closed. And the bladder muscle, everything up top here is supposed to be nice and relaxed to allow the urine to accumulate in your bladder. Okay, so at rest, urine storage. When the bladder is going to go in contraction mode, it's going to be evacuating the urine. So you're supposed to have an opening of the sphincter at the bottom. And when that's done, the bladder is supposed to start contracting to empty itself in the bathroom. So that's what the normal function of a bladder is. Where Parkinson gets in the way, what it does is basically, like I said, that brain to bladder connection gets a bit more blurry. So at rest, the central nervous system we have in our brain has trouble talking to the bladder. So whenever it gets messages that the bladder is getting full, those messages could be a bit more misinterpreted. So you could have like a weird interpretation of what's going on. And sometimes also, instead of just your bladder telling the brain, we're getting full here, instead of just saying that by messages, it could start doing some heartbeat type of contraction because it's getting too full. And that can lead to urgency, urge urinary incontinence. So basically, you're going to have a tiny contraction, and then you get up to go to the bathroom, then that tiny contraction comes into a full evacuation contraction. So that could be a problem along the line. And once you understand that, and I give you my little technique to reverse that a little bit, then you'll be able to understand that you have control. It's not necessarily only the muscle that has a control. And I wanted to make a distinction too, that the bladder fiber, you know, the bladder is a muscle, but it's not a muscle you can contract voluntarily. You cannot say, oh, bladder, go on. No, you cannot do that. It's like an intestine muscle. It does, it's working automatically. It has its own system to work automatically. The only thing you control though is that sphincter muscle at the bottom. So this one you have control. And also to protect your kidneys, this control here has a very neat nerve system that loops back to your bladder. So whenever you activate your sphincter or you close it, it's going to tell your bladder, don't contract. So we're going to use that very neat function of your nerve system that's really, really close loop with your bladder to calm down those uncontrolled contraction that you may have more and more as the Parkinson's disease progresses. So understanding that really makes sense into putting the control back into your hands as far as controlling urine incontinence. So I'll go to the next slide. So whenever you have that urgency that occurs, what do? That's the more you have the leakage, the more this is going to happen. So whenever you have the feeling to go, you're going to say, oh, I'd best go now because I know I might leak if I wait too long. So that's going to be your first reflex. And the more you do it often and early in the process, the more it's going to tell you earlier and earlier as the years goes by. So it's not something you do overnight, but as the years goes by, the urgency is going to sneak in more and more. So head for the bathroom as the first urge to go is not necessarily the best thing you can do, because we have like the first urge to go, which is like not supposed to be that full. I'm going to have a second urge to go, that's my time to go. And the third one is basically I'm going to burst, and no matter what you do, I'm going to empty. So you don't want to get to that point either. But you can train yourself into delaying those messages along the way too. And that's a learning process you have to do. And that's where I kind of come in and help you with being able to recognize and the signs and everything to be able to be successful. Walk fast and thinking the whole way about leakage. So basically it's the worst thing you can do. If you think about the bladder emptying the whole time you're going to the bathroom, for sure it's going to want to help you out and follow your guidance because you're in charge. So it's going to say, well, she's thinking about it, might as well go, or he's thinking about it. I'm going to start them helping around and I'm going to start squeezing. So thinking about the leakage the whole way you're going to the bathroom is not the best thing to do. Stop breathing. You have to imagine where the pelvic floor was at. Here is at the bottom of the pelvis, right? So the only other muscle that's basically parallel to the pelvic floor is your diaphragm. So your diaphragm is basically, if you kind of stop breathing and making it very, very stiff, you're going to create some pressure on your bladder that's already crying for help, and your pelvic floor at the same time, making it hard for you to control the sphincter. So stopping breathing is a problem. And get nervous while you're taking your clothes off, which means a bit even reinforces the sense of urgency in your brain. So that's also, you know, all the things you're doing wrong, you're probably all doing at least three on four of all of them. And you're basically reinforcing the problem. Things to consider to help your symptoms. Okay, so what you want to be doing is stay active, like just in general. Like I'm glad I'm doing this at the power gym because that's basically what I'm reinforcing everything. So it's like stay active, keep your mind busy, you know, because if you're like always focused on the next time to go to the bathroom, well, that's not a good thing either. It's like, oh, you're sitting all the time, and then I'm like, oh, the bladder is calling, and then you haven't, you know, stood up in 2 hours. Anyway, so that's for sure going to be a bit more stiff to get going to the bathroom. So stay active, keep your mind busy, that's the best way to not lean into urgency too much. Keep all the muscles around the pelvis and hip flexible. And we know as the neurological problem evolves, we're getting stiffer and stiffer, and that posture forward can make the hip really, really tight, and then everything around your bladder, your hip flexor muscles are going to be in very close relationship with your bladder, and that tightness can transfer to one another. So that's, I'm going to give you a few more exercises to try at home, and it's probably exercises you're doing at the gym anyway. As I talked earlier, manage your constipation. So drink more water, exercise, do some lumbar rotation, make sure you walk enough in the morning. Get a little bit more of a hot beverage in the morning to help things going, because your bowel movements are going to occur more in the morning. So it's a good idea to just manage the constipation, talk to your doctor, talk to a nutritionist to kind of see if there's any supplements that would be good for you in order to manage constipation better. But that's a very, very big key about, there's a lot to do with constipation problems and urinary incontinence. So these two go hand in hand together. And if you try to manage just one at a time and the other one's a very big problem, going to have trouble getting both of them in order. Try to control the urge before you go to the bathroom. So that's going to be my next slide. So actually you need to make sure that you are in control and you're not going as a very big emergency reflex and straight shooting for the bathroom and running. So try to really use that technique I'm going to show you today to control before you head to the bathroom. Keep a good hydration, super important. The first reflex when we have leakage is to stop drinking because you don't want to go to the bathroom too often. But at the same time, there's also, I was telling you about the volume that we're assessing in our bladder, but there's also chemical receptors in there. So everything in the bladder that's a bit too concentrated, if there's not enough water to mix all that chemicals up, it's going to feel irritated and it's going to start wanting to squeeze also without your consent. So having a good hydration, about 64 ounces of water a day, decreasing the amount of coffee, tea, iced tea, and trying to also, the best trick I could give you, because 64 ounces might seem like a whole lot for a lot of you. Don't get to that tomorrow morning because I said so, okay? So that would be a big problem. Some of my patients are really, focused on, I'm gonna get that right, and they get to 64 and they have a big disaster. So you don't wanna be doing that. What you wanna be doing is starting to keep water right next to you, sip, small sip throughout the day. You don't wanna say, oh, I haven't drank all morning, I'm gonna gulch down like a 12 ounces bottle because I need to catch up. Well, that's not the right way to do it. You need to kind of sip throughout the day. Like I said, you need to keep that bladder content pretty much even throughout the day. You don't want to have very big volume increase all at once around meal times or stuff like that. You really want to kind of sip throughout the day to make it work like you want. So good hydration, big key as well. So if we're going to my special technique, so this is what usually my, that's what we learn in my second visit. So first visit, we're just gonna go through all your symptoms, gives you some tips, like I said, for hydration, constipation, see where the problem is, and understanding the pelvic floor a little bit better, and what I can do to help you. Second visit, that's really what I do with you. So if you come and see me, it's gonna be a bit boring because we're gonna go through that again, making sure you understand that, because that's a very big key of fixing the problem. So controlling the urge, like I said before, let's say you just got up, you're like, oh, really need to go. You're gonna sit back down. So it's boring, you were about to go somewhere, but you're gonna sit back down. Or if you're in the kitchen, washing dishes, sometimes that water trigger is a problem too with urgency. So you're gonna get that warning, you're gonna go in the dining room, sit down, and you're gonna take a nice, deep, calming breath. Because like I said, if you squeeze, or if you stop breathing and panic, well, the diaphragm is going to push too much on the pelvic floor and too much on your bladder, increasing the pressure even more. So stop what you're doing, sit, nice deep breath, calming breath. And what you want to do, we're going to use that nice system I was talking about, the little junction of a nervous system between your sphincter and your bladder. You're going to squeeze your pelvic floor 8 times. So it looks like I'm going to have you guys do it at the same time as me. Going to squeeze the pelvic floor like you hold urine and gas. I hope everyone's doing it right now. I cannot help it but do it because I'm teaching it. So, and then you relax. You're going to do it again. And then you relax. So you basically squeeze the pelvic floor all the way to the maximum. Hold it 2-3 seconds. Let go. Basically, you're sending the message to your bladder. So you squeeze again, that it's not time to go. You relax. We've done 4 so far, if I'm counting right. That's my problem in therapy. I never count. So let's squeeze 4 more times. You squeeze, you hold it. 1, 2, and let go. 3 more. Squeeze. 1, 2, and let go. 1 more or 2. See, I'm lost already. And let go. And let's do 1 for good luck because I think that's going to be our 8th one. So you squeeze and let go. Some patients of mine say, well, then what happens when I squeeze and let go? The bladder wants to start emptying. Okay, no problem. What you're gonna do is you're gonna squeeze and you're gonna hold that for 10 seconds. You're gonna squeeze, hold nice and tight. You wanna keep a good breathing. You don't wanna squeeze and hold your breath because then, again, too much pressure in your abdomen. So you're gonna squeeze and hold the sphincter closed for 10 seconds, and then you're gonna slowly relax. And that should do the trick to kind of calm down the bladder. Then you go straight into mind distraction. You're gonna have to get distracted for a good minute just to get because there's a zone in your brain that assesses all the signals from your bladder. So you're going to get that zone shut off, and you're going to light up another zone, which has more importance than the bladder zone. So basically, you're going to use all memory type of little games in your mind just to distract you from that first warning. I gave you a few examples there. Anything is good. Anything you learn, like in therapy, that has to do with, working on your voice or something like that. You could do those little exercises as well. But the one that we found useful was like count backwards by 7. So you start at 100 or 200, and you go down 193, and then -7. So you have to think about it a little bit more, and that should take about a minute to get to 0. Name all the states capitals that like you can name all the states about alphabetical order. I would never be able to do that. I'm a Canadian. I could do a bit more in Europe though, so that'd be good. You could also appoint girl or boy name that start with the ABCs. If you do that at night, my trick is if you're sitting at the edge of bed and doing that before you head to the bathroom during the nighttime, you don't want to start working too hard with your brain because it's too asleep. So what I give my patients like a trick is to start singing nursery rhymes, or a song that you like. You could kind of just sing that in your head and or think about what you want to dream next for when you come back in bed. So if you're doing that at night, that's going to be the type of distraction you want to do. And number 5, you reassess. After that 1 minute of doing stuff, you're like, oh, is the urge better? Can I get up safely and go? If it's not the case yet, you're like, ew, it's very, very intense. It's going to leak on the way. Try to do it again. Kind of stay seated, or sit if you have tried it standing up and didn't work. Like sit down that time. Nice deep breath. Contractions again. Distraction for a minute. Then you get up and go. Usually don't do it more than 2 or 3 times. If it's really, really gonna go, you don't want to delay too long and be unsuccessful. But still try at least a second time, especially at the beginning. And so that's it. If it happens at night, because a lot of people is going to have it at night, and you have less control because you're not always all there, and also your medication has stopped kicking in also, so you might be a bit more stiff getting up. So try to do all those steps anyway at the edge of the bed to be more successful. And be patient with yourself. It's not always going to be successful the first time you use it. I've had patients that it worked though. I saw them like once and that was it. They were like, it's gone. I don't have any more problems. That's when like the miracle worker, but that's not always the case. Be patient with yourself. Keep working at it. Work at it on smaller urge too, like a normal urge though that it's not going to leak anyway. So try working on those with the technique, and then you're going to be able more and more to integrate it to the very much bigger urge to go. So that's my, my clinical pearl. That's what we do, and that's what I teach with the urgency. So I hope that's, so as I was talking about earlier also, so in more successful, like helpful exercises, what you could do to, and these are just examples. You're all, attending some physical therapy at one point, or you have the ones that you like for your back. So these are all good still. I just want you to have a few examples of exercises to keep your hip loose. So on the left-hand side, we have the happy baby. While they're both really young, and it might not be as easy anymore to do those exercises, but just keep in mind, you just need to open the pelvic floor, keep a good breathing. And what I tell my patients, usually you cannot really reach at a certain point when stiffness sets in, you cannot reach your feet, but you can reach behind your thighs. Just let your knee falls on either side, and you keep your hips open that way, and hopefully doing that. But a lot of my patients are still able to do that type of stretch. So, and the goal for that one is not to contract the pelvic floor, is to keep everything at rest. Like I said, like Parkinson's and hips, you have a lot of stiffness that wants to come in. So the goal is to get everything nice and loose again. So any hip, the next one is more the hip flexor stretch. There's tons of hip flexor stretch. So go with your therapist, the one that you go to. They're gonna be able to assess the best one for you. That's just an example of what to do lying on the bed, but there's tons of hip flexor stretch. You could put a foot on the chair if you're balanced really good and stretch that way. So there's a lot of hip flexor stretch, hip flexor stretch, I think it is. So I'm going to go to the next slide. One of my favorite is the child pose. The one, if you notice this one, she has her knees really, really spread out. So you want to open the pelvic floor a little bit better, leave some space for your belly as you lean down. You can also place your hands like this and put your forehead down in order to support your head if it feels more comfortable. It's nice and good for your low back. It leaves some space for your tailbone to relax. So what you want to picture when you're doing that is kind of relaxing pelvic floor and an opening up of all the pelvic floor structure, and try to keep in mind of what, you know, a pelvic floor looks when you're doing that position, and try to really relax, have a good breathing pattern in order to suit everything and put everything to zero. Piriformis stretch. The piriformis is like a small muscle that the sciatic nerve is really close in your hip. So you want to open that up a little bit by doing something like that. This one is a very advanced one. You don't need to put your other leg all the way up like that. Sometimes just crossing your leg is enough and kind of grabbing your knee. So check with your therapist if you're able to do that, but never stretch to a point that's hurting you or that you're not comfortable. You always have to do a comfortable stretch. Well, let's see here. Oh, wait a second. I had like a problem with the share screen here. Yep. I don't know what happened, but I'll share here. Okay. So are you still seeing me, Callie? Yeah, okay, good. And my last exercise I put there, again, like I said, the diaphragm is a muscle that if you squeeze it or if you're too tight in there, your pelvic floor is going to be affected and your bladder too. It's just diaphragmatic breathing. You lay down or you're in your recliner, going to put like one hand on your thorax, one hand's going to go on your stomach here. And the trick is when you inhale by the mouth or by the nose, it doesn't matter that much. You want to bring all the air in your abdomen. You don't want the chest to be the one that rises and falls. That doesn't move on top. The hand that's on your abdomen is going to be pushed out like you're almost pregnant, you know, big belly full of air. You want to feel that bubble of air, like relaxing your pelvic floor. And when you exhale, your hand's going to fall back down on your belly. And the chest, again, hand doesn't move. So you want to be doing that for 2-3 minutes and just a relaxing type of breath. And whenever it's going to get, the more you do it as an exercise, it's going to get easier to do the step, you know, the step 2 of my technique, the urge technique, to be able to breathe and have a very nice calming breath once you practice it quite a bit. So that's pretty much it for my exercises here. So I want to thank Kelly and the Power Group to have invited me for that presentation. I hope that was helpful to you. I left my email address if you have any questions that you want answered a bit more privately, don't hesitate. And I can also, if you need like treatments, I can help you also with that.